Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Reverend G. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, aka Reverend G, and I'm here every Monday night bringing you conversations with guests from all walks of life with different perspectives. We share resources, we support you in any way that we can. We talk about life, we talk about love, and we talk about spirituality. And we talk about spirituality from a practical point of view. How does it support you in your everyday life? What are some of the spiritual practices that are important for you? I talk about the spiritual toolkit. We all have different practices in our spiritual toolkit that support us. And I love having my guests come on to share because we all need different things. At different times, some of my practices work, and then I have to go through others. So I'm always looking for inspiration, looking for new ways to live my best life. And that's my thing, is to support you in access and joy and living your best life with grace and ease. You can find me every day on Facebook and on Instagram. On Facebook, I'm Reverend Grenetta Mason, and I'm on Instagram as Rev Grenetta. And I have daily inspirational messages to support you throughout your day. They're there every morning. You can look at them in the morning, in the evening. But my hope is that they will inspire you and support you when you need to be uplifted. I'm excited today because I have Dr. Mari Godavia. Oh my God. Dr. Mari, I am just over here killing your name, right? Dr. Mari Govaya. And she is a life strategist and a coach. And she always has inspirational messages to share with us. Welcome, Dr. Mari. And don't kill me. Don't kill me. Don't kill
I love
me.
you, Rev G. I'm going for it.
And I was just like, oh my God, I had practiced this so hard. And in the moment, it's just like, oh, please say it.
I wish I had $1 for every time somebody mispronounced my name. I'd be a millionaire on that one alone. It is a pleasure to be with you, Reverend G. I am Dr. Mori Digovaya. It's wonderful to be here with you. Thank you so much for the invitation. I loved our last conversation on mastering rejection, and I'm looking forward to this one on love, and life.
Yes, I am too. It's interesting when I think about Lent. So I grew up in Christian church, but we didn't practice Lent when I grew up. We didn't get ashes. We didn't do any of that when I grew up in church, right? So I never really had the experience of practicing Lent. And then, as I went through life, sometimes I would say, "Oh, it's Lent. I'll give up bread." But I don't know if I ever really, stuck to giving up the bread or had any practice around what it really meant. So when you offer your program in that moment, I was like, "Oh, this will be interesting because you will walk us through each day." What inspired you to put this together in community?
Sure. So a little bit of history there as you're talking about your where you grew up. So my mom was raised Catholic. And when she had me, she basically said, I'm not gonna christen her in the Catholic faith because she wanted me to, one, have a relationship with God. She didn't want me to know Christ, but she also wanted me to have the experience of understanding what different religions offered, what different mindsets of spirituality offered. And so she wanted me to choose. So growing up, definitely I had her elements of Catholicism there, because she too had eventually veered off of Catholicism and went towards Christianity. But there were things that she still did. She still did, like she did Lent. She did like novena, 9-day prayers. And like if after somebody passed away after 40 days, you pray for them. And she kept certain parts of the Catholic faith active in her life. But for her, it was much more about a relationship with God and Christ. As I got older, I had the opportunity, just out of curiosity, because I'm a thinker, right? I'm
Mhm.
an educator by trade. I love learning. I love listening to different people, hearing how different groups think. I also appreciate traveling, and I've been fortunate enough to be everywhere on every continent except Antarctica.
Mhm.
Once I cross 50, that's what I would love to do that. But in my travels as well, I got exposed to different religious thought, different spiritual thought. So Buddhism was one of the key areas that I know I studied intensely. I had the pleasure of being in Tibet and enjoy that experience and see what that looks like activated within the culture, within a country. I've also studied Judaism, the Kabbalah, and in my 20s, late 20s, when I became a school leader, I really landed on Christianity. I credit, like, I'm a member of Christian Cultural Center here in Brooklyn, New York. Pastor A.R. Bernard, very influential on me during that time. He often spoke about leaders, and he was a leader, a pastor who led for leaders. That's how I heard him.
Mm.
And so for me, it's been pretty much this journey in adulthood through Christianity, and landing back there with Christ. I also studied Islam. I love the Muslim culture and Islam religion, and Muhammad and Jesus. They could have been brothers in many
Yeah.
ways, and
I
how
like
that.
how you I like how you say you landed on Christianity too, because I was raised Christian and I'm
Mhm.
an interfaith minister where I studied our religions. I did the practices,
Yeah,
right? I actually participated in all the different practices. And then I'm back to landing on Christianity, right? In a way, but in a way where I'm understanding it more,
hmm,
where I'm able to even ask the questions, even
sure.
be in it in an authentic way, I want to say. And so that's how it's coming for me now. So I
Yeah, and I
do,
get that. I
yeah.
totally get that because as I'm mentioning, so like, so Islam, loved Islam. I think it's a
Mhm,
beautiful religion. I love the idea of stopping in the day and praying and just taking that moment of having an active prayer life and how Allah operates in the faith. And I often battle myself around Islam. I think a lot of it, where I veered away from it, had a lot to do with ego, as
mhm,
a woman,
mhm,
and how women are regarded and revered, and that while they're lifted, there are times where they are positioned to, be behind men, even like in prayer, right? You don't sit with the men, you sit behind them. And I'm clearly aware of my ego
mhm.
and what that meant for me, as an American woman. We love to be front and center, and we love to be, you will hear me as a woman type of thing.
Yeah.
But even though within, I'm clear on the ego piece, the religion itself is beautiful, but and hence where I got towards Christianity, I think about Jesus's interaction with the woman at the well and how he regarded women, how his relationship with Mary, it spoke to me. And so for the most part of my adult life, it's been around Christianity and going forward. In regards to the program, praying, meditating, I coach. So I do a lot of these day-based challenges, right? So I've done 30-day challenges, I've done 60-day challenges, and
Mhm,
90-day challenges with my clients. And what that looks like is basically we would meet in the morning, and everything from, there's a topic of the day. So let's say today we're looking at trust, and then I would give a message about trust, and then we would do a meditation on trust, and they would have their day around how trust operates and follow up the next day. So basically, a lot of life principles, a lot of spiritual principles would come up in my coaching.
mhm,
And I came into the new year, and I said, I'm going to take the first quarter or so, at least 2 months of the first quarter, to just be a little calm and, praying, meditating. It came up, Lent is coming up. And this is actually my favorite season. Easter is
mm,
my favorite holiday on the Christian calendar.
mhm,
Such a testimony to who Christ was for Christians, what he gave during his lifetime, and in answering the call to be the Son of God and to sacrifice his life in that belief, in that vein for us, so that we can live free and we can be sin free. I love this season. And during one prayer meditation, it came to me, you should do 40 days in honor of Lent. Oh, Lent. Lent brings up so much, right? Because one of the major principles of Lent is that you must fast on something. And choosing to fast on something, it's like, 40 days, okay. But when you think about what Jesus did for us, Jesus died at 33 years old, right? He gave everything to us within those 33 years in response to being obedient. And it was, because it couldn't have been convenient to keep pulling that line of thought and then gathering disciples and then preaching to community while people are booing you and telling you and saying, no, you're actually not the Son of God. You're evil. You're this, you're that. And then how many years later, there are people on this earth to today who still believe in the power of Christ. So I was like, you got to do this, Maury. So I opened up the door and I was just like, I'm going to do this program called Lent, Love, Life. And I kept it as light as I possibly could because my programs can be very rigorous. So I really wanted people just to enjoy the connection of, one, remembering that the Bible offers the word. It offers the thought, the mindset, the gift, the words, the promises of God. And then, of course, in the Newer Testament, you get quotes and you get quotes documented from Christ and what he was expecting us to live through. And so it was simple as you're going to get a daily message. In that daily message will be a daily prayer. And we'll meet 3 times live to do a coaching session. And it's donation based, which was also a stretch for me. And just like, again, the word of God, just do a donation base. People will give what they give. So if you gave $1, thank you. If you gave $300, thank you. If you gave $1,000, well, thank you. It's all within gratitude. It's all within the space of everyone has value and worth, and everyone gets to understand and build a relationship with the life force that brought them here onto this earth, our Heavenly Father God.
Yeah, it is true. We're in day 19.
Yes, today's day 19.
Yeah, so
Beauty for Ashes.
Right. So what have been some of your key experiences with the community throughout these 19 days?
Wow. Key experiences. It's the text messages. It's the phone calls. It's the donations out of nowhere. I'm like, you already gave, you're good. And people are like, no, you don't understand this morning's message. Hit me in a different way. It's been, do you really understand what you're doing for us? People telling me that. I got a text last week, and I'm in my regular good government job, right? And I get this text from someone. She says, basically, you have reconnected me with God and reminded me of the power of God in my life. I mean, what's better than that, right? Yeah. When people are reminded, I believe day 1 was the breath of life. And I began with the idea that God breathed life into you. And that's everything from we are created in his image. So when you look in the mirror and you speak, you know that the God is within, right? If you are as God as it gets and the breath of life of God is in you, what can you not accomplish? What can you not face? What can you not do? To today's message of Beauty for Ashes, where we've all gone through challenges, we've all had trials and tribulations. And a couple of days ago, we looked over First James and talked about counting it all joy, all trials in life, counting it all joy. And the knowledge that even though in those spaces of ashes, I talked about some of us have gone through cremations. Like my mom was cremated when she passed away. So that's a literal cremation in my life. That was a loss. And others of us have gone through metaphoric cremations where something we may have invested in. You may have given your whole mind, body, and soul to that job because you just love that job and you were passionate about that job. But in return, you may have gotten ashes. You can rest assured that God will give you beauty for your ashes because God loves you enough and finds you joyful and delightful enough that he created you. He knitted you in your mother's womb. It's out of Ephesians, right? You are fearfully and wonderfully made in the book of Luke, right? So if you're all these things as God has planned you to be, even in the face of ashes, you will receive your beauty.
Wow. And what resonates for me is that the message is so simple, but sometimes it can be so complicated for people to get, right?
Yeah.
And as we look at how to support people in, as you said, the joy and God within and having everything, the power that we have, right? Some of the things and the ways we get to do that, it varies, right? Because I can see through understanding the Bible and Christianity, you get to understand your worthiness. You get to understand that your power. You get to really see who you are, given you study the word in that way.
Yes.
And so it's really refreshing as I go through and I listen to your talks and the way you connect it with how we live every day. And I think that's one of the important things about any religion, Christianity, spirituality, is how does it support you in your everyday life, right?
100%. I had so another piece of commentary I've gotten from some clients is
Mhm.
that how they were either raised in religion or how religion has fallen upon them has disconnected them from God.
Yeah.
And in that
Mhm.
disconnection, so once you start getting disconnected from God, you become disconnected from self, you become
Mhm.
disconnected from family and friends, you just become kind of isolated within your own space. And then
Mhm.
you're leaning on your own understanding. And then there's that ego conversation that you get to have with self, because
Mhm.
it's a me fi me world, right? That's your sorority, that's your fraternity. It's me, it's about me.
Mhm.
And it robs people from that opportunity. And to hear people who said that was their experience to now 19 days in, wow, I'm reconnecting. I'm
Mhm.
reading the Bible. I'm listening to the messages. I'm
Mhm.
personalizing the prayers. I encourage the
Mhm.
participants. I say the prayer. You are
Mhm.
more than welcome to stop the recording. You're more than welcome to insert your name. You're more than welcome to name the ashes, because everybody has their own personal ones, right?
Absolutely.
Your gratitude list and what that looks like and what you're thanking God for in your life. It is very real. So when folks have negative experiences with religion and they have experiences where they, I look at my own mom, right? So I told you she was raised Catholic. And a
Mhm.
part of the reason why she went towards the direction of me, saying, wanted me, Maury, I want you to know God because there is a God and I choose Christ, but I also want you
Mhm.
to explore and see what this world has to offer because it's not just one answer. My mom had me out of wedlock. So when
Mhm.
she had me out of wedlock and she went to go get me christened, she was rejected by the Catholic faith.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So.
So,
Mhm.
so within that space, right? And I'm baptized today, right? You find the folks who are willing and able to embrace you. And that's who I am as a person. And
Mhm.
that's what I believe God has planned me to be. Like I do my best to see people. And while the isms of racism, sexism, gender and class, all these things sometimes can separate us. Like
Mhm.
anytime people bring up stuff that brings about separation and like you're so different than me,
Mhm.
I don't hear that as God.
Right.
I really believe God is a loving God. God is a
For
unifier.
everybody, exactly. And
I
that brings to mind one of the things that you were just saying. We were talking about the future of the church, right? In the Christian church, because of the way the LGBT community
Sure.
is banned, right? Or of how do they now embrace all of that based on the way the Bible was taught, the based on the way they were like kicking people out. And so now you're seeing a shift, right?
Mhm.
Not everywhere, right? And I think it will be a gradual shift to, as you said, be inclusive as opposed to excluding any one person.
Yeah, you also, Reverend G, a couple months back, you had my sister on the show, Lisa, and one of Lisa's funny quotes that I always say is, she always says, don't criticize me because my sin is more obvious than yours, right?
Yeah,
And I think it's such a funny quote because it's true. Like some
yeah,
sins are just like, you a sinner,
yeah.
and other sins is like, you
Yeah.
know, that's
It's
if
like,
you want to get literal about what's in the Bible, gluttony, overeating is a sin, baby, as
exactly.
much as lust is. being lazy, slothfulness is a sin too, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's always interesting to see what people choose. I
Mm-hmm.
firmly believe in being inclusive. I'm certainly an ally to the LGBTQIA community, and I really, one of the the first group, the first coaching sessions we had within Let Love Life, the exercise, and I invite your audience to think about this as well. The exercise that I worked the participants through was about, are you humanizing God or are you allowing God to be God? I think a lot of times humans humanize God. God is not a man. God is not shocked by your behavior. God is not like, I can't believe he's gay. No, God is the creator, right? God is the, let God be God. And
Mm-hmm.
I had the
Mm-hmm.
clients go through the list of it's messages for the day, and where were you in that message? Were you humanizing God in that message, or were you truly allowing God to be God? And I think if we allowed God to be God, half the things that we experience on this earth would just never happen, because
Right.
the greatness and the level of creation and infiniteness
Mm-hmm.
is so present that you wouldn't have
Understanding that, though, understanding that, because there's so many
absolutely far beyond human
distractions.
comprehension.
Yeah.
But there's this humanization of God. God is
Mhm.
like shocked. God is
Mhm.
appalled. I'm like, don't humanize God.
Right.
Like, let
Exactly.
God be God. And then
Mhm.
let me say this: that is a huge lesson, even on from me, because so many times, like I mentioned before, about my going back and forth around Islam. It's like that was ego. That
Mhm.
wasn't me at my highest possibility. That was me like being a woman. But
Mhm.
or I know where God is concerned, my womanness is just one piece of who I am. It's that I'm so much more than that,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
all too often we end up in this space where it's like, I'm gonna humanize. I want the X factor to occur in my life, and then I'm gonna humanize God around that, right?
Mhm.
God is gonna show up as human. God is not human.
Right.
Not at all. No human could create the heavens and the earth. You've been
Right.
on an airplane and see the clouds and the
Mhm.
sky. Like, no, 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 no. You could be Bob Ross about it and
Mhm.
do a beautiful painting, but
Right.
you're not creating that,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
So, my heart and my spirit goes out to the LGBTQIA community in this example, but any community of people who are continuously exiled for
Mhm.
just being who they show up as,
Mhm.
right? I mean, male seahorses carry babies.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know what goes down under the water, but are people like, okay, there goes that male
Let's
seahorse
see it, right?
baby, and the female
Mhm.
seahorse is just running around free as can be. People, people judge. Does ocean life judge the male seahorse?
Right. Exactly.
Like it would we, but we, and I think that is life in itself, right? There are
Mhm.
many examples of life where it shows up different, and
Mhm.
it may show up outside of whatever the quote unquote societal norm is.
Now
Uh,
yeah, as you talk about judging, when I think about that, I think about how we are all judging machines. We judging ourselves, others, and circumstances, right? And so one of the things that I would like to and I'm doing for myself is recognizing, right? When those things occur in our lives, I think we got to get into habits of doing things so many ways that it becomes just the way that we're doing things. So
Absolutely.
actually practicing, I'm doing this mental fitness coaching, and so one of the things around that is to look at your judges and your saboteurs and just
Mm,
be aware that they are there. And so then it's about intercepting them, right? Then shifting to a more positive sage perspective and using your self command muscles. So that's the premise, right, of the whole thing. And what I found is, as I look at my judges, because they're never going to go away. They came from within. I'm able to now say, oh no, I'm not judging myself as much. It's like, oh, that's a judge, and being able to flip from that. And even to, I love that we get to look at others and circumstances, because I know we're hardest on ourselves. But as
Absolutely.
hard as we are on ourselves, it goes back to you, right? Because as much as I love me, I'm going to love me, right? If I judge myself hard, I'm judging you too. So it's
Absolutely.
like that kind of mirror thing where if you're not, if you get in touch with who you are, right? I'm not judging myself. I'm less judgmental of you and circumstances. But this program really teaches you how to intercept that and then move to a new perspective. And I thought of it because the last time you were here, you talked about the gifts of rejection. And I thought that was really positive because your gifts point to the same thing in that they are, one of the things we say in a sage perspective is either you're going to accept it as it is, or you'll then look for a gift or opportunity.
Mhm.
And when I think of each situation that where I have any kind of negative emotions or energy around, right, I look at it and I say, okay, I can accept this as is, or I can look for a gift and opportunity in it. And your five um, gifts of rejection reminded me of that.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, the saboteur. Oh, the saboteur and the judge.
Mm,
You know, we walk with that. We walk with that. Like it's our inner child too,
yeah,
right? And usually, if you were to do the work, like Sister Yanla would say, do your work. If you do
right.
your work, right, you would see that somewhere in your history, somewhere in your past, some moment happened and you made a really big decision, right? And that decision has walked with you, it's carried you. There were times even where that decision may have served you. And then one day it just doesn't. And it's
Right.
time to grow past that decision.
Exactly.
And usually, yeah, the saboteur within, the judge within, right? My running joke used to be when the two Muppets
Yeah.
on the Muppets, the show The Muppets, Jim Henson's The Muppets. There were the two judges, and they used to sit at the top of the balcony. And they would criticize everybody. As a kid, I loved those two. I thought they were hilarious. But as I grew older, I'm like, oh my goodness, they live with me.
Yeah.
Right? They live with me. They're inside of me, and they're like just sitting there quietly, and I may be smiling, but I'm judging inside, right? And
Mhm,
then it just doesn't serve anymore.
mhm,
And within the mastering rejection conversation, when you start receiving rejection or experiencing things as rejection, that's because you are a source for rejection. You
mm,
wouldn't be able to experience it. You wouldn't be able to see it even if you didn't have it within you first, right? So your disconnection to self, and this goes back to the God conversation that we talked about a little earlier. Like if
mhm,
you're disconnected from your creator, you're going to be disconnected from yourself, right? And then you're not going to be able to see yourself. So even when you look in the mirror, you're not going to say, oh, look at this beautiful creation that God has brought forth. You're going to, my eyes, my weight, I
right.
wish I had this. Why don't I look like this? I wish I had more makeup. I should need to do this
Mhm,
thing. If I wore this color, I'd look better. And meanwhile, you're walking around as a perfect, whole, and complete being on this earth. Like you're the spiritual being having the human experience. And within the human experience, when you're taking on those rejections, check the stories. How do you listen to the world? How do you see the world? And if
mhm,
you have a filter that says, I am rejected by me, that
mm,
means you've given license for every experience, and not necessarily that people are rejecting you. It could be a no in your favor, but
mm,
because you are so disconnected from yourself, when you hear that no, you don't think, oh my goodness, thank God I got that no.
mhm,
Thank God I didn't marry that person. Thank
mhm,
God I didn't take that job. That actually worked out for me. That was my life actually serving me.
mhm,
Because you're disconnected, you hear that no as no one chooses me, people
mhm,
don't like me, I'm
mhm,
too much, I'm difficult.
right.
But that's your filters working,
Mhm,
right? Because that's you looking at the world a certain way, that's you listening and hearing the world in a certain way, and your engagement. Because the reality is, and I love your point about how, we don't see ourselves. We're physically designed to look outward. So we see other people and we think and hope we want people to see us. When people tell you certain things, is it possible that even in the contrary feedback that you would not want to hear, that there is a truth that truly serves you? Because I see you probably in a better position than that job can offer. I see you in a better partnership than that relationship can offer. So I'm going to say no. I don't want to date you anymore. What do you mean you don't want to date me anymore? I'm an amazing person. I'm a this, I'm a that. And it's like, what if that was the ultimate gift for you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you know, and this goes to the current program, right? If you know and receive God, right? We went through a whole day dedicated to seeking God first, right? If you seek God first, you will be able to have the human experience that allows you to see you.
Yeah.
So then when you are in these job hunts, and when you are in these relationship hunts, and when you are in these get your health right hunts, you will be connected with people who really are with you because you are with you.
Exactly.
How often we expect other people to be with us and we're not even with us.
It just brought to mind when I think about a spiritual base, how spirituality supports my whole life, in my job, as you said, in my relationship, in everything, because I have a healthy relationship with God and myself. I am supported. Now, my spiritual practices also support me in sustaining that relationship. It's just like with anything, there's consistency. You get to continuously do it to sustain it and understand it. And you know how we would go to church all the time, but that was to always keep that word prevalent, right? And to always keep it right there for you to sustain. So I get all of the whole consistency. And when I talk about Reverend G, who that is, it's like I really just want people to understand and get the spiritual support.
100%.
You know,
it's the fuel. You know,
fuel.
Wayne Dyer had the book, There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem.
Yeah.
And definitely one of my big influencers in life as well. And I think about, you know, in that text, what he offered basically was that for any and everything that you're going through, it may be showing up in the physical, but there's really a spiritual problem that's not locking there. That's creating human experience. That's creating the physical 3D experience. That's why physical mastery is so key. You know, people spend a lot of time in the gym. You know, you can judge them for what you want to judge them for. When you can master your body and get your numbers right and have your fitness in check, the physical mastery is a representation of what spiritually is going on. Because and your money is an example of that. The type of relationships you're in is an example of that. Whatever the 3D impact is that you're seeing in the physical space lets you know what's happening on the spiritual space also, because without it, you wouldn't be able to manifest it in the physical. So when things are going right in the physical or wrong in the physical, tap into your spiritual.
Yeah,
spiritual is the root of how it all comes to pass. Because if the spiritual, and that's why the disconnect from God, don't be disconnected from your creator.
Right.
Don't be like, there is a, I remember when my mom was sick, and one night in the hospital, it just got my mom passed away from pancreatic cancer. And one night in the hospital, it just was so heavy and so overwhelming. And her doctor came in, we were talking, and I was crying. It was a sad moment, but a powerful one. And I said to the doctor, I said, I know I love her, but her God loves her more. It's time for her to come home. And I accept that. Right. And even as a mother, I have 2 children. Like, I love my children, but I'm so clear that God loves them more. The creation that said you get to be knit in your mother's womb. Come on now. Like that is beyond love. Right. We don't even understand love in that type. This is not agape type love. This is like a deep, generational, ancestral, planned over time through the times love that I'm bringing you forth here onto this earth. So if you're going to be disconnected from that energy, that's why, like yesterday we did the message was about be children. And in that prayer, I not only talked about praying for your inner child, who you are as a child to your parents, whether they are alive or deceased,
Mm-hmm.
right? And who you are as a parent to the children who you're raising,
Mm-hmm.
but also thinking about the children of the world,
Yeah.
right? I'm so concerned. I'm an educator by trade, as I said. I
Mm-hmm.
am really concerned about our children today because
Mm-hmm.
I'm clear that our children are disconnected from who God created them to be. There's too
Mm-hmm.
much violence. There's too much the elements of suicide. There are all these things that are kind of looming around our children that are not of and by and through God.
Mm-hmm.
And who would children get to be if they were continuously reminded of their worth, their value, not only as humans, but as spiritual beings having the human experience, so that
Wow.
they would know that the God within is alive and well, and
Mm-hmm.
that you can really truly create and be who you need to be within your destiny, within your journey. I would love to see more of that happen. And people will simplify it with like, oh, we need to put prayer back in schools. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm
I
saying
know.
is we got to
Exactly.
help our children look in the mirror and see the God within. So when
Mm-hmm.
you see the God within, you will know who you were created to be. And of course, prayer and meditation and Bibles and Qurans and Kabbalahs, they can all support within that piece.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a big lie going on, and not only for children, we see it in adults as
Mm-hmm. You
well.
know,
That
it's so refreshing to hear that, and then my mind goes, "How do we make that happen? Like, how can?" Because it was so serve our kids who, as you said, are really right now disconnected. And I know you started as a teacher. You were
I was a teacher. I
supervisor,
was a teacher. I was a principal. I've been a superintendent.
so yeah, you've been through the whole chain, right? And over the years, right? The difference, right? And what lens are you looking at from now? Are you still in the education
I am
arena?
still in education. Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. And
So
go ahead.
yeah, no. So you asked me what lens am I looking at it through?
Mm-hmm.
I look at it through transformation. I look at it through what are we able to engage children in. So
Mm-hmm.
everything from blind spot reveals, programs like Momentum Education come to mind, programs like Landmark Forum come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday school, that's a viable piece too.
Yeah, we
Uh,
went to Sunday school.
yeah, Sunday school is real. And
Yeah.
you know what's really missing, Reverend G?
Mm-hmm.
For all the times I've engaged with kids, and I'm going through it right now with my son as he chooses his high school. Listen to children. We don't listen to children.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've sat with children in transformation spaces where they are looking at their own leadership of their own lives, that is the number one thing they say about adults.
Mm-hmm.
Adults do not listen to them. They don't know how to be with them.
Mm-hmm.
And when that starts to happen, they start seeking other children who they could be with. They start seeking other platforms that will listen to them. And then we lose our children,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the ability to sit with children and connect with children and not lecture children.
Right,
Oh,
right. No, I
enough with
understand.
lecture. Nobody wants to hear your mouth,
Right,
right? But
exactly.
to pose the open-ended question, to
Mm-hmm.
give them an opportunity to respond, and then to give them an opportunity to think about what is the application of that? What does that look like in your physical world, right?
Mm-hmm.
On a spiritual or on an emotional level, you're being guided to feel and think this way.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Let's manifest that into reality. What does that
Yeah.
do for you when you're able to create within the real space? I think all too often adults have it in their mind like, I definitely for high schools, I have my choices where my son is.
There we go. Mm-hmm.
But guess who has to be there every day?
He
Guess
does.
who
Right.
has to sit there with
Exactly.
teachers every day?
I know when I went through that,
Right? He has
it
to go
was
through
like,
that. I
right.
can sit and dream it all I want.
Yeah.
It's his journey. So
Yeah.
as mom and the conversation with his dad as well, it's
Mm-hmm.
like step back.
Mm-hmm.
Let's trust that he is wise enough to understand
Mm-hmm.
what he's experiencing for the different tours and high schools that he's been on and
Mm-hmm.
what he's going to choose. It's going to be for him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All too often, people are losing their children after, and let me say, and the ironic cruelty is honestly, Dr. G, Parents are working hard. They're
Mm-hmm.
buying their children what they believe they deserve to have. They're
They are.
spending their good money. They're
Mm-hmm.
positioning them. They're giving them things they didn't have when they were children,
Yeah.
but they're missing out on the essence of who their child is. And
Mm-hmm.
God has positioned you as parent. Like you were, I'm the vehicle through which the children were born onto this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not their answer. God is
Mm-hmm.
their answer. That
Mm-hmm.
answer is within them. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
guide.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a support system,
Right. Right.
right? I'm not living their life,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? My job is to empower them to be courageous enough to choose their life. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, as mom, as dad, we guide and we show. But I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the what we're seeing now in terms of the breakdown is
Mm-hmm.
either sheer disconnect or too much controlling, and you're not
Mm-hmm.
allowing children to really have their space and their voice in their world.
I think about what that might look like because we think about the breakdown of the church and youth. At this point, a lot of people who are dealing with youth are still talking about how to keep them engaged, how to
Mhm.
bring them back. And now that we're virtual, what that all looks like,
Yep.
right? And then I get excited when I'm talking to you about how, on an educational level, what a program will look like universally for kids, right? Because of these are so important things that if they can learn early and have that connection early, how it would take them through life.
Sure.
And as we and I'm not sure, I'm not in education, but you know how they always separated the church.
For
Are
school.
there any I mean, I guess they're calling it transformation. Is that how you're seeing? What are you seeing in
Yeah,
education?
I'm not sure if church is the answer, right? I can hear it right now. We
Right.
need to put prayers back in schools. You can. I wouldn't be adverse to that.
Right.
But I don't know if that's the answer.
Right. That's what I'm saying. What would you call it? I don't necessarily bring it like say that's it either, right?
Yeah,
Because
I would say it's the opportunity to transform. And I would say it's the opportunity to connect.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It's really the connection, right? Do you see me? Right? And then the bigger piece is, dear educator,
mm-hmm.
teacher, principal, superintendent, education leaders, shut up and get out the way and listen.
Listen seems to be a
Listen, listen, Linda, listen. Listen,
mm-hmm,
are you listening? Right?
mm-hmm,
What would you need to be
mm-hmm.
successful in our school system, for example?
Yeah.
And let them speak.
Mm-hmm,
And then as leaders, you would create structures and systems to what they spoke to.
mm-hmm,
What gets in the way a lot of times is politics, because we
mm-hmm,
want who we want and we want it to look how we want it to look. And then you stop listening.
mm-hmm.
Politics makes us stop listening.
In the way the programs are designed, you in the
Yeah,
way,
it's
yeah,
like
okay.
because it's the execution. The
Mm-hmm.
execution falls apart because you
Mm-hmm.
got political.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
stop listening, right? So you may have created the space, you may have had the forum, the children may have spoken, but
Mm-hmm.
when it came time to operationalize and when it came time to apply, because application is the evidence of learning,
Mm-hmm.
politics got in the way
Mm-hmm.
and seen. And
Mm-hmm.
it's sad because the kids will say, "But we told you, what we said." Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that while you may have given the space for me to talk, you didn't apply what I said. And because you didn't apply what I said, you did not hear me.
Listen.
You
Mm-hmm.
didn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't listen. You may have heard, but you didn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And let me say this, the demand on helping our children outside, especially in this realm of violence that they seem to be trapped in many cases, is that if I'm talking to you and you're not listening, eventually I'm going to stop talking to you. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what we're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
We're experiencing our children at times. They have stopped talking to us because I wouldn't trust us either. Because here I was telling you my truth. And then
Mm-hmm.
how did it get executed? How did it get applied? It fell.
And so many of our kids are having so many mental health issues. How
Yes,
are we addressing that, right?
of
Because
that. Yes.
think about how many kids are committing suicide. I just don't remember it being so prevalent,
No,
you
I
know,
feel like
right?
I constantly trap. I'm like it's like a Go Ask Alice, which was a book that I remember reading in the sixth grade.
Right, I
And
remember that too.
yep, the diary, right? And she
Hmm.
was like she was suicidal, and I remember reading that like it was an anomaly. Like I
Yeah,
don't,
exactly.
and then I remember reading The Catcher in the Rye, same thing, like
Hmm. Hmm.
anomaly.
Hmm.
Now, that's not an anomaly anymore. It's like a
Wow.
choice.
Yeah.
It seems to be a choice. And I don't know when it became a choice,
Mm,
and again, it's like, mental illness is real.
it
And
is.
there's treatment for that, and I'm not dismissing that, but
Hmm.
the volume to which it has become the norm is heartbreaking.
It's
And I
hard.
do wonder about where are we in our connection to our children and their ability to be with. And I think sometimes too, as a mom, I could think about, like this year, I'm like, there's some position I do outside positions where I work with clients and so forth. And there's some things I'm like, okay, I got to cut that off because I have
Mm,
to be present.
hmm.
It's not always about sending your kid to the fancy camp and giving them the material things.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's 30 minutes a day
Hmm.
of let's walk around the park or let's go shoot some hoops or something. And then you'll get a different connection.
Hmm.
And I'm always, as I'm raising my children, these are things that are on my mind. I know by no means have all the answers, but
Hmm.
I definitely know that some considerations get to be cut off,
Hmm.
even if they may have been helpful financially or helpful towards a means to an end. If it's disconnecting me from my children or taking away time from my children, it may not be worth doing it.
Yeah. And that's important to know too, because you could spend so much time trying to give them what you didn't have. And that's not
Yes.
necessarily what they need. They just some time with you is all that's important, right? Because
Yes.
even we didn't get what we had, but we knew our parents loved us, right?
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? And it was just
Right.
there, and you didn't get everything you wanted, you didn't get half the things you thought you wanted, right? But you got the love and the
Yeah,
foundation,
and the intention.
all of that. I was like, I would say, my mother loved me to death, right? You know how you know that
Hmm.
love, right? And even on the outside, when people didn't treat me good or when things always happen, I could run to my mother, who
She was certain.
always, right, was the one that just lifted me up and kept me, right? So it's really that having that foundation and that love, that base love. And I was today, my post was about love and living a life of love and just loving on people. And I like to in the street just smile at people with my eyes, and it's so cool to see them just smile back like in surprise, right?
Hmm.
you know,
Yes.
just because I say, I always talk about joy, and it's always there. It's just can we access it? And
Yes.
what supports us in accessing that joy at any time? And it's not to downplay our trials and everything that we're going through, right? But in the midst of all of that, you can still access that joy.
Right.
And
That's that first James, right?
yeah,
Blessed
exactly.
count it all joy.
That's
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, and it's in the beingness.
Mm, mm,
It's
mhm.
the love will happen and show up in the beingness. The joy shows up in the beingness.
That's it. Exactly.
And it's and there's the be do have
Mhm.
aspect of how of life transformation and life principle. And if you think about what you're having, what you think about what you would want to have, name those things. Then what would you do to have those things?
Mhm.
Okay, and then who would you be once you have it and you did it?
Mhm.
I would be joyful. I would be this. Well,
Mhm.
then choose that energy first,
Mhm.
right? It's in the beingness. If you're
Mhm.
able to love, okay, I would want to know love. I would want to know how it feels like to be loved.
Yeah.
Be it.
Mhm.
Be it, right? And then your actions will follow suit. And then all of a sudden, love just starts pouring your way. And also, some hate might come your way, because who needs love more than hate? Right? So that's always the funny part of those stories, right? I was choosing joy. I was happy. And then this very miserable situation happened. Well, of course, because you're joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So miserableness needs some joy.
Yeah.
You know, but the courage to stay in that space, even when the miserable shows up. Exactly. It's the courage to stay in that space, even when the hate shows up.
To keep choosing it, choosing it.
And start explaining yourself.
Exactly. Oh, man.
You don't have to, you know, because when we're going to be here all night on this one, right? Like, stop explaining yourself. Like, just be the love. But they said this about me, and they did this to me, and then they complained about it. Be the love.
Right.
Because if you get caught up in the trap of the explanation, of the verification, of the validating, well, then your ego has just shown up, and the God within has walked out.
Exactly.
Because you have decided that it's more important to be understood. Stop leaning on your own understanding and trusting God with all your heart, and He will make your path clear. It's written. So you don't have to show what you know all the time.
Right.
Just be it. I know, like you ever say good morning to somebody and they don't say good morning back?
Yeah.
I did my part, Reverend G. I said good morning.
I did. Yeah.
I did my part. I'm being loved. I said good morning. They didn't say good morning back. Maybe they didn't hear me. Maybe they grunted. Maybe they didn't want to say something back. I did my part.
Right. You're being that person.
I'm not going to go into a whole explanation as to why they rude and why they did this and how come they did that. And every time I say something to her, she never said, it doesn't serve.
Stop. And you know what comes to mind to me, because I always talk about grace and ease, and being is so grace and ease, isn't it? Right?
Yes.
So it is just the ultimate grace and ease in being, right? And it's a connection, though. I think that when I did the momentum training was when it really hit me, right? Because I'd always talked about being versus doing. There's always been this thread throughout my life for the past 20 years around being versus doing, because I was a doer. Always like, boom, doing, right? Yep. And then the shift, right, to now I'm a beer all the way, right? So,
isn't that wonderful?
Oh my God!
It's effortless ease.
Yes.
Once you choose the, Deepak Chopra in his book, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, one of the laws is the law of least effort.
Yes.
And I swear, for years, I love the book. I think it's a great book. But that particular law used to get me. Like, I'm clear. You don't tell a tulip to be a tulip. You don't tell orchids to be orchids. They just are.
They just are.
But when you decide to be Dr. Maury.
Yeah.
Just be Dr. Maury.
Exactly.
What would Dr. Maury do? But it's raining. What would Dr. Maury do? But they coming for me. What would Dr. Maury do? But they said this about me and it wasn't true and it was mean. What would Dr. Maury do? But they didn't choose me. What would Dr. Maury do? Just be Dr. Maury. All these considerations are going to come your way. And just like no one has to tell an orchid to be an orchid and to be the beautiful orchid that they are, every person gets to say their name and be that unapologetically, without explanation, without right, wrong, without make bad, without make wrong. But again, that will only, it's been my experience, the complementing of that comes with understanding the divinity that you are. You understand the divinity that you are, and that God has put you here not to suffer. God is a loving God. God doesn't hurt. If it hurts, that's not of God.
Right.
There's a love, there's a joy, there's a light that comes with God. If you get that, you will say your name, Dr. Gloria DeGovaya, and be love, be joy, be happiness, be content, be complete, be whole, be risk-taking, be trusting, be vulnerable. Whatever your be is, and just go forward and do it. And then as you do that, the exciting part is that all the other beers on the earth
They
who
come
are
to
just like I'm
yeah.
being too. They will
Yes,
find you.
they will. Yes,
And what a
absolutely.
community and a tribe you get to live with and be with,
Absolutely.
because they are on the same accord. It's written, where two or more are gathered in his name, he is present.
Yes.
Well, imagine walking around with not only yourself, but a whole community of people who are also in agreement.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
then the presence of God is there for all of you as you live life. Then people start looking like, wow, you live that life.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I thought the world was falling down. Maybe around you, but in my reality, nah, the world is building up.
Yes. Absolutely.
Because I one piece of, like, I just want to say here, the idea that you could be on the same earthly plane as other humans, but just living in different realities.
Mm-hmm.
And if you live long enough and you keep within this train of thinking long enough, and you let your heart be your guide, you
Mm-hmm.
will see that there were people who once you lived in that reality with them, but you're no longer in that reality. So they're still alive on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
You're still alive on the earth, but the realities are totally different.
Yeah.
Like, you can work in the same organization, but where they're working in the organization and where you're working, two different realities. You could
Mm-hmm.
be living in the same borough as them,
Yeah.
two different realities. So just
Mm-hmm.
because you share the earthly plane with people and circumstances doesn't mean that that will be your reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more you're choosing into the God within, you're going to start connecting with those people and circumstances and events that are like, oh, I'm about the God within. I
Yeah.
want to be loved.
Yeah.
Let's get together. And it's
Yeah.
going to grow from there.
That's
Very exciting stuff.
that energy we talk
Yep.
about, the energy that you're putting out there.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So we're getting close to the end. What would you say are your top spiritual practices, and what would you like to leave the audience with tonight?
Okay, so what I would love to leave the audience with tonight is the power of your voice.
Mm.
Life and death are in the power of the tongue. And every time you speak, whether it's on a personal note or on a professional note, with family, friends, with your children, your spouses, you are either speaking life or you're speaking death. Today, I encourage you to speak life. And anytime the death words come out, that would be things that are lower vibrationally, things that don't grow, things that don't have light attached to them. I would highly recommend that you just cancel it and start over again.
Mhm.
I'm a firm believer that my words work. And
Mhm.
because I said so, I live the life that I live. So that's what I would want to offer your audience, is to
Mhm.
choose their words wisely and to know that whatever you're saying, you are creating, because your words are just a manifestation of what's on your heart. And if you find yourself as somebody who tends to be a negative speaker, right? And not only to other people, but
Mhm.
what do you say to yourself?
Mhm.
Like, what are the words that you say about you?
Mhm.
Right? Because again, the what you say to you is only going to be manifested and magnified more by what you bring to other people.
Yeah.
It's not other people, it's you and what you're saying.
Mhm.
So if your words don't seem to serve the life that you say you want, check your words.
That's really key.
Yeah, your words, because your words are going to foster your beliefs.
Mhm.
The word, because you only can say what's on your mind.
Mhm.
Right? Right? You're only gonna say whatever that last thought was, how whatever
Mhm.
that last emotion was. That's what's
Mhm.
gonna come out your mouth.
Mhm.
If you're spewing "Bleh," and it sounds like it's like vomit, and
Right.
that's speaking, what's going on inside?
Mhm.
All right, and to choose narratives that serve. And I love to push on this, because people tell me, no, that's what really happened.
Mhm.
Is that what really happened, or are you making meaning of that?
Mm.
And the I'm sitting in a chair right now talking to Reverend G.
Mhm.
That's what's happening.
Right now.
It's a great
Absolutely.
experience. Yep, Reverend G, she is the truth. I love her. That's my meaning making.
Mhm.
That's my meaning making.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if something contrary had happened in our exchange, and I said something around that, again, that's my meaning making. It doesn't make it true.
Right.
The only thing that was true is that Reverend G and I was sitting and talking.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're looking at life and death is in the power of the tongue, when you decide to formulate your words, are you creating or are you destroying? Every capacity. So whether you're the mother and dad leading the family, or you're the leader at work leading the team, if you speak death to people out of your mouth, you've already done it to yourself. And therefore, you are magnifying and manifesting it into your world. Like, I'm always concerned about leaders who berate.
Yeah.
Like, you're never going to get what you want to see, even though you think you're telling the truth.
Right, right.
You know, because the truth sets you free. So if the truth leaves you in diminishment and in bondage, I got bad news, boo. You're not telling the truth. You're telling your truth.
Right. I was going to say, who's
your ego.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Because the truth sets you free. So if you were to drop that mic and everybody's like, I am liberated and ready to go. Telling the truth.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not doing that. And that body language shuts off. And like, yo, I can't wait for this person to stop speaking. Right. I got bad news. Your truth is bondage. You are not telling the truth, and you will not have people follow you. So
yeah, I love it. Like your word. Yes.
Speak life.
Speaks life or death. I love it. Well, I really appreciate that you took the time to come and have this conversation with me, and I look forward to. We're almost halfway there through our Lent journey.
Yes, tomorrow's day 20.
Day 20, right? So I look forward to continuing this Lent journey, and I appreciate all that you do.
Thank you, and all your viewers. If you need to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram at the Degovia Group. So that's TheDegoviaGroup, the Degovia Group. I'm on Instagram, and I'd love to see you. And thank you so much, Reverend G. Thanks for the trust, the time, and the energy, and of course, the dynamic conversation. I appreciate it. Love you.
Dr. Degovia. Got it. Take care.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Be well.
All right, you too. Thank you for joining me tonight on Conversations with Reverend G. I'm here every Monday night on WEMS Radio. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, and Twitter. I'll be here again next week, bringing you conversations with dynamic guests who will share their experiences and leave you with something to support you in accessing joy and living your best life with grace and ease. You can find me every day as Reverend Grenetta Mason on Facebook and as Rev Grenetta on Instagram with daily inspirational messages to support you throughout your day. I look forward to seeing you here again next week on Conversations with Reverend G. You have a powerful, great week.